Monday. You know what that means. The Jersey First Television Network probably brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk. And certainly, ladies and gentlemen, I am the generational talent in Garden State Media and certainly your leader for trustworthy opinion journalism. That's right, folks. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Happy Monday to all of you. Hope you had a wonderful Father's Day. Shout out to all the dads, my dad, my uncle, two best men that I know, and all the dads out there that tune in every Monday night here for the best 60-plus minutes of independent media anywhere in New Jersey. That's right, folks. Real Talk, right here with Fernando Uribe via Jersey First TV. And, of course, if you haven't done so already, ladies and gentlemen, just take 6 seconds. Like, comment, and share tonight's episode here on all of your social media platforms. Make sure you like us on Facebook. Of course, follow us on Instagram and X. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. You'll be automatically notified of all the great content we bring you every single week here in New Jersey. And of course, we get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud. Download Jersey First and take it with you anywhere at any time. I can't say enough, folks. Proud to be leading the way here every single week via Jersey First TV. Always educating and advocating for the residents here in the big city of New Jersey. That's what we do here on Jersey First TV. Folks, a jam-packed show here, as always. And as you can see here, I'm rocking New York orange again, folks. It's New York versus everybody. Shout out to the 2026 NBA World Champions, the New York Knicks. A little bit more on last week's parade in downtown Manhattan. I'll share my experiences from last week. So, of course, I'm still feeling giddy from the recent win by the New York Knicks in the 2026 NBA Finals. First championship in 53 years. Folks, I wasn't even alive. I think a lot of you weren't either. Okay, President Nixon was in office. I think gas was like 40 cents a gallon, whatever it was. Let me tell you, a long time ago, but it's good for New York to be back on top of the basketball world. Of course, I'll touch on that and more. Folks, during final thoughts, I have a lot to say, as you know, about some of the bad actors in New Jersey, especially in New Jersey media. Folks, when I think about bad actors in New Jersey media with awful takes, well, ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't take much to really find out. When we talk about Uncle Dave, of course, David Cruz, and Chucky, Charles Style, place embarrassing takes on what we call, I guess, that Mickey Mouse show that Uncle Dave hosts. But, we'll touch upon that a little bit later. And again, my condolences to Aaron Morrill and Fred Snowflake, who had to sort of endure sitting there next to these two clowns. But I'll tell you why they keep being clowns later on. During final thoughts, folks, trust me, I never disappoint with telling you the truth on this program about these clowns here on. Of course, also, folks, you want to stick around for a special comment, of course. And certainly also during final thoughts, I'll tell you about why the Assemblywoman in the 32nd Legislative District up here in Hudson County, Katie Brennan, just continues to wield her puppeteer skills with clowns on the city council in Jersey City. A shout out to the Hudson Chronicles. More on that later during final thoughts. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, always a lot to say during a special comment. Of course, shout out to the New York Knicks after 53 years. The new NBA World Champions. And, of course, we'll talk more, obviously, during a special comment. But, folks, I can't say enough here. Obviously, I'm proud to announce that Real Talk is proud to partner with Son Cubano, Ventanas at the Modern, and Experience Solas in Jersey City, as Duran Entities is our new sponsor here on Real Talk. We're on them now.
Duran Entities has now joined Real Talk with Fernando Uribe and Fernando Uribe Media. Enjoy delicious food, excellent watch parties, and a wonderful atmosphere at any of our 3 incredible restaurants. Son Cubano, located at 40-4 Riverwalk Place in West New York, New Jersey. Ventanas at the Modern, located at 200 Park Avenue in Fort Lee, New Jersey. And Solas, located at 25 River Drive South in downtown Jersey City. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you there.
That's right, folks. Duran Entities has joined Real Talk with Fernando Uribe here. Appreciate them being our newest sponsor here on Jersey First TV. Folks, more on them a little bit later. But, of course, it's time to talk about politics on this show. And why not talk to a guy that really has a good pulse on the political scene here in New Jersey? He's a good friend of mine. He's also the distinguished director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. And a guy, I got to tell you, I'm as jealous as ever. Guy with perhaps maybe the best head of hair and the beard I see right now in New Jersey. He's my good friend Micah Rasmussen, joins us live on Real Talk. Micah, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I thought you were going to be jealous of the cool job that I have, right? Something like that. No, it's the head of hair. Thank you for having me back. Thanks for
I'm
the.
jealous of the job, but let me tell you something. That's a great head of hair and beard. I'm just trying to get there, brother. I'm just trying to get to that.
Listen, I love being with you. Love the compliments. It's always great talking to you. We always have a great conversation. Really
Absolutely.
respect you. Yep, absolutely.
And I
Yep.
appreciate your time. I know you're really busy at the Rebovich Institute. And by the way, folks, if you're not familiar with the Rebovich Institute, and we'll let the distinguished director expand on that later, but it is dedicated to public service and scholarly analysis of government, public policy, campaigns, and elections in New Jersey. It offers a series of campus events featuring the state's leaders, facilitates political internships, and runs the Rebovich Fellowship Program. For more information, you can certainly check out rider.edu if you're looking to get involved with the Rebovich Institute. Michael, we'll get into that a little bit later, but I really want to pick your brain here. Coming up on July the 7th, and for us pro wrestling fans, July 7th, this coming up is the 30th anniversary of Hulk Hogan becoming a villain in the world.
Oh my God!
But it's a historic moment for us fans because of, again, 30 years ago on July 7th, but on July 7th, also in 2026, we might see perhaps our own new set of villains presenting themselves at Rider University, where it seems like an ongoing Twitter beef is finally going to culminate in a showdown between Matt Rooney, the founder of Save Jersey, and also the state senator, John Bramnick. We've been following this Twitter beef. It's almost like Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man for years. It culminates July 7th. I don't think it's a one-off, but tell us what really brought this together and, quite frankly, the work it took to make this happen coming up.
So you're right that this has been an ongoing difference in attitude and opinion on what the best way forward is for New Jersey Republicans. As we know, they've been the minority party in New Jersey for 25 years. And what's the best path out of the wilderness? Well, Bramnick believes that the way forward is, President Trump is not the most popular guy in New Jersey. He has made no secret of his differences with Trump over the years. He wins in his district, which is maybe ancestrally Republican, but is more affluent, is more educated, and frankly is receptive to that moderate message. He thinks that that's the way to win going forward. He didn't get a lot of traction with that message in the gubernatorial race last year, of course, but Rooney believes more along the lines of the Trump version of the party. He believes that New Jersey is going to win not by half measures, not by Trump light, but by going all in. He thinks that the party, the Republican Party, is Trump's party at this point. So you want candidates who are loyal to him. You want the money that can be raised through Trump is much better than, opposing Trump. The money just isn't there. He believes you go all in. So I'm paraphrasing, but this is going to be a real discussion about what's the best path forward for the party. How does the party go about forging a message statewide and vision statewide that they can implement that maybe gets them out of the wilderness at long last?
I mean, Mike, again, I don't want to relitigate what happened last summer during the primary, but it seems like there's some paradoxes here. And maybe bear with me. I'll try to break it down for our audience here. But, again, Senator Bramnick is alleging that, whether it's allegiance to Trump or the MAGA brand of Republican isn't going to resonate here in New Jersey. Okay, but if that's the case, and again, he's a moderate, he's run as a moderate, he's won in a district. There's kind of a purplish district, right, where where he's a state senator.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's the case, I mean, let's be fair about who Jack Ciarelli was. Jack Ciarelli wasn't this overly conservative person. I think it's fair to say that Jack Ciarelli was a moderate Republican running again in the gubernatorial primary. So is it just like, well, maybe Jack was just the more likable moderate between him and Bramnick? Because if he's saying that, well, moderates are the ones that win, okay, fine. But it was a moderate that won the primary because, again, I wouldn't call Jack Ciarelli an ultra conservative.
No, I wouldn't either.
Just that Jack was the more likable moderate then?
Ciarelli's an interesting question. And the reason he's an interesting question, as you know, he ran 3 times. He didn't win the nomination 3 times, but he ran 3 times. And each time he had a little bit of a different take on Trump. In 2017, Trump was just won the election. Chitterelli was really almost, you'd call him a never Trumper at that point. He moved to the middle in 2021. I guess, maybe some Trump people questioned his sincerity there. And by 2025, he realized that the party had moved significantly in Trump's direction. So he was more all in with Trump at that point. So I think Chitterelli represents this difficulty that the party has had figuring out what to do with Trump. And I think in many ways he represents the debate that the party has with itself. Listen, maybe there's not an answer statewide. Maybe you have to run differently in Bramnick's district than you're going to run in deep South Jersey, where Matt Rooney's law practice is in Cape May County. That's very receptive to the MAGA message, Ocean County, that kind of thing. Maybe there's not one statewide profile that you have to have. Maybe you do need to play to what people want locally. I don't know. We'll see what ideas they have and what they come out with. But you're right. I think the onus is on Bramnick because he wants something different. He's got to say, all right, not just how is the ideology different than Trump, but also how do you run campaigns? How do you find candidates? How do you raise money? How do you put together the infrastructure that's diametrically opposed to the Republican president and win in New Jersey? Not just, we'd like to have ideas that differ with him, but how do you make a party run like that?
Absolutely. And on the flip side, Matt Rooney has been a pretty consistent conservative for almost 20 years now. I mean, I'm probably dating myself when I say this, but I go back to knowing Matt when I was chairman of the Hudson County Young Republican Club, and he was the Camden County chair. So when we were on the state executive board, that's how far back I know Matt Rooney. And he's been pretty consistent as a Republican and as a conservative. Obviously, he started Save Jersey back in 2008 as a sort of a rebuke of, at that time, this love affair that existed with Barack Obama. Obviously, 20 years later, we can sort of debate how we look back at Barack Obama. But the bottom line is that, Rooney's been pretty consistent as a conservative. Now, whether or not he always embraced Donald Trump, again, you look at his record, you look at social media posts, you can go to Save Jersey and decide for yourself. But, he's been pretty consistent. And I think at the core of their argument, for example, I know that Bramnick is alleged on his socials, and I'm sure this will get, I'm sure maybe this is a good talking point for you as you're prepping for this debate. But, Bramnick is alleging that, well, if we get back to a Chris Christie style of Republican Party, right. I'm like, well, first of all, let's get it twisted. Other than being a Cowboys fan, I can't think of anything redeeming about Chris Christie. Some years later, whether it's 8 years as governor, what we saw with the budget, what we saw with, compromising with Steve Sweeney, Sheila Oliver, with Vinnie Prieto, the Assembly speakers and the Senate president.
And let's remember that he left with a 17% approval rating. Yeah. He governed effectively for, 6 years, something like that. Bridgegate took a lot of the wind out of his sails. And then, Beachgate took a lot of the wind out of his sails. People were ready to turn the page by the time his term was over.
Yeah, and also, too, let's be fair. Again, I know this because I ran for state assembly in 2011. Chris Christie didn't help one Republican really get elected in the legislature. Like, he didn't help any majorities.
No.
Even slice into the Democrat majority. So I always found that to be interesting. So, listen, I'm looking forward to this showdown. I think, certainly, listen, they're two attorneys. They're poised. I think they know how to keep their cool.
Right.
But I'm pretty certain I think there'll be some good jabs. But I also have to say, though, Mike, if you're Christine Hanlon, the new state GOP chair here in New Jersey, you have to kind of scratching your head and kind of not nervous, but I think a little apprehensive about as if you need to give Democrats more ammunition about, oh, look at us, look how Republicans are so divided and how they're trying to one up the other. And it seems like maybe the party should be a little more united. But again, that's not Matt Rooney or John Bramnick's fault. I just think it's going to be entertaining and informative. But if you're the state GOP, you have to be a little bit nervous about what this creates in terms of politics. Is that fair to say, though?
It is fair. I will tell you that my goal from the outset is not to highlight the differences. The differences were certainly going to come out. Absolutely. I want to see if we can find common ground. I want to see if, look, the party is the loyal opposition right now. And as the loyal opposition to the administration, to the governor, to the legislature, are there areas of agreement between them? Are there things that, yeah, there are differences. There are differences in the Democratic Party too. Are there areas where the two different sides of the party can get on the same page? Are there areas you have in common that you can say, all right, well, this is a path forward because this is where we can bridge the divide? I don't think it's necessarily one where they're just going to be fighting with each other the whole time. I think we may see areas where there's some agreement there.
Now, do you plan on wearing a referee shirt, or are you going to wear a nice shirt and tie that day?
I hope I'm going to fade into the woodwork. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah.
Okay. Folks, again, if you're just joining us live right now, the distinguished director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics, Micah Rasmussen from Rider University, joins us live here. Again, drop a comment or a question in the comment section. And like, comment, and share tonight's episode. It really helps show your support for fearless independent media here with Real Talk New Jersey First TV. Michael, we'll get to some of the primary results earlier this month in a moment, but I did start the program outlining the sort of core mission of the Rebovich Institute. But for our viewers tonight that are tuning in for the first time and seeing you for the first time, take us back in time as to the origins of the Rebovich Institute and what you do with the great students at Rider University.
Well, it's really nice of you to ask because it means a whole lot to me on a personal level and in addition to a professional level. Dr. Rebovich was my professor, David Rebovich. He was a guy whose shoes I like to think that maybe I fill sometimes. Certainly he had big shoes to fill, but he was the dean of New Jersey political commentary. And in his day, there was really him. And when anybody was writing about or reporting about or analyzing New Jersey politics, David Rebovich was the guy that you went and you talked to. He was a professor who meant a lot to me. He set me up in my first internship. And so when the chance in my career, I had done a lot of things in politics, in government over the years. And then when McGreevey left office, I was his press secretary. His name was Bud. My name was Bud, not because I was involved, but because I was speaking for him. I went into the private sector and I did communications there for 15 years. And when this job opened up, the chance to follow in his footsteps, he passed away in the classroom, unfortunately, and Rider decided to name the institute after him. And the chance came along to do the work that I love to do. Teaching 1 day a week is something I had done all throughout my career, just teaching one course as an adjunct. And when the chance to take that full time came along, I jumped at it. So what I get to do is I get to set students up in internships. That is the primary thing that I do. I steep them in the area of politics and government that they are interested in. We have a student who just graduated. She's going to Harvard Law School. Very proud of her. I have a student who just graduated who's now working for and reporting for David Wildstein at the New Jersey Globe. Very proud of him. Whatever your path, we are going to tailor your program, your internships, your experiences to what you want to be involved in. So that by the time you graduate, you have all the experience to roll right into the field. And very, very proud of that. So that's part of what we do. Another big part of what we do, you mentioned a speaker series. We bring public officials to campus. And one of the things that I think is really important, because people see my personal politics or my opinions, I don't let that influence. We bring Republicans and Democrats in a very balanced way to campus. Really important to give our students a balanced view across the spectrum. So we bring Rooney to campus. We bring Bramnick to campus. We brought Brian Bergen to campus and Jay Weber. And so we really have across the board that we want to give our students exposure to all different parts of the ideology. And so really proud of that. And what else do I do? Commentary on New Jersey politics. Those are the things that I primarily do. Commentary, internships, and the speaker series. Of course, we've done a lot of debates on campus. You've been to some of those. Really proud to help educate voters on the choices that they need to make as well.
And speaking of your politics, I've always looked at you as more of a center-left guy, Micah.
That's fair. That's fair.
I think it's center-left.
That's fair.
Are there any conservative views you have?
I believe sometimes people will disagree, right? But I view myself as a fiscal moderate. I do view myself as not a tax and spend guy. I don't think you can grow up in the southernmost part of this state and not have some of those views. It's not a liberal place. It's not a progressive place. It's an area that is socioeconomically disadvantaged. Some of the poorest parts of the state are in the deep South where I grew up. But it is an area that does not believe that you tax and spend your way into prosperity. And so, I'm kind of a hardliner when it comes to tax and spending.
Listen, I'm just glad when you return my email, when I send you a link to the show, I don't see pronouns in your email. I'm just happy about that. Okay? I'm ecstatic about that. But Mike, on a serious note, though, obviously higher education really is under the microscope for some years now.
Yep.
My alma mater, Rutgers University, very well may see some cuts in the budget. More on that later. But what are you hearing about Rider as presently constituted? I mean, obviously, every
It's
year
tough.
going through some tough times.
It's tough. Yeah.
What can you share with us about the current state of Rider?
It's hand to mouth, no question about it right now. The school, first of all, we know that there are less students who were born in this age group. There were just fewer kids being born. So that's part of the problem. It's the demographic cliff. We knew that was coming a long time. And that's something every school is facing, public, private, large, small. The other thing that's happening is we know that there are less kids going to school right now. They're choosing to do other things. And so there's sort of a double whammy with who's going to school and how many people there are to educate. And some of the schools that are being hardest hit are the small private institutions. Bigger schools can weather the blow than smaller schools, better than smaller schools. And so some schools were well positioned for this. Schools like Monmouth, candidly, that didn't take on any debt. They really worked hard. That was their ethic over the years. And so they are positioned, they are facing the same enrollment struggles that a school like Rider is, but they at least have that cushion to fall back on. Rider had to take on some debt over the years to sustain itself. And so we are struggling to get our way out of that. We've made improvements. We have a new president. We've reduced our debt down, and we're continuing to do that. So we're weathering the storm, but it's a struggle. It's definitely hand to mouth right now. There are 8 schools in New Jersey, all private, small ones, that are having a hard time and are fighting to make their way through.
Hopefully better days ahead for Rider, as we say, financially, and we'll see what happens in the weeks and months ahead. And folks, if you have not had a chance, please visit rider.edu for not just only the relevant politics, but obviously for all the academic programs and obviously all the other great amenities available via Rider University. Great campus. I've had the privilege of being there on multiple occasions to cover post-game, post-debate game analysis, as they say. Beautiful campus. Hopefully looking to get there on July 7th for the big showdown, moderated by tonight's referee and the director of the Rider University Micah Rasmussen, coming up on July 7th at 3 p.m., by the way. So the start time, obviously, there in the afternoon. Michael, let's get to some primary results here earlier in the month. And let's start in your neck of the woods there. CD12, obviously, the original cast of characters that were looking to succeed the retiring Bonnie Watson Coleman in the 12th Congressional District looked like a WWE Battle Royal with that many candidates.
13 candidates,
A lot of them were very well funded. Early on, it seemed like perennial activist Sue Altman, who had lost by 5 points in 2024 to Tom King Jr. More on him later, ladies and gentlemen. But she looked like the favorite going into kind of the blizzard season in February here in New Jersey. But in the last few weeks, it seems like Adam Hamway really caught fire, got a lot of donations, but a lot of questions remained about some questionable ties to Adam Hamway. I mean, again, Micah, for me, and listen, I don't want to be hyperbolic about this, but I live in Hudson County. I look at the skyline every day. So when I don't see the Twin Towers there, and I just look at the Freedom Tower there, I grew up looking at that site every day.
Yeah.
And when I think about Adam Hamway, who has yet to really answer questions about his ties to a sheikh that, was in conjunction, cooperating with the bombing in 1993 and other questionable ties. I mean, listen, Linda Sarsour, who's a radical jihadist, was at that victory party. They're applauding with him. as they're all screaming Allahu Akbar in that room. Again, Micah, concerns about Adam Hamway, but for some reason, it seems like the establishment media only now is raising red flags when they should have been doing it months ago.
Yeah, well, you have to remember a couple things, I think. Good perspective to keep in mind. New Jersey almost has no established media left, right? I mean, who's
Sure.
covering New Jersey politics on a daily basis? And so a number of print reporters wrote about him and his ties to the Blind Sheikh early on, before the primary. But whatever that was, and they were national stories about it, Wall Street Journal, different publications picked up those pieces, wrote those pieces. New York Times covered it, but whatever they were covering, Hamway did not feel pressure to answer the question in any more detail than he was willing to put on the bone, right? There's an expression during a campaign: if you're explaining, you're losing. And he didn't really feel the need to explain. He felt like he was on a trajectory to win the race. He was right about that. Primary voters, Democratic primary voters this year progressives are having a lot of success in these primaries. And in some seats, in some cases, it's costing them, like in northern Maine, in that congressional district, the progressive one there, that is lumberjack territory. That is not a good thing. The DCCC just wrote off that race because you're not going to elect a progressive liberal in that district. So in some cases, it's going to cost them. Here's the thing. In New Jersey, the 12th district is one of those districts that's probably pretty safe for the Democrats. It was drawn that way. It's very safe. It's very Democratic. And so primary voters there may have made the decision that they could go liberal, they could go progressive, because they're going to win that seat no matter what. In other seats, and I know we'll talk about this, and I don't want to step on that, but in other races, Van Drew's district or Tom Kaine's district, the voters made a more strategic decision, more conservative electorate, more conservative opponent. They wanted to come to the middle, so they nominated a more palatable candidate who was not necessarily the most out there progressive politics-wise, and they thought that was going to be their best chance of winning those seats.
And last week I had Representative Josh Gottheimer on the show. He represents the 5th congressional district, very suburban area of Bergen, parts of Morris, Sussex. And listen, he's a great interview, and he was very careful at how he answered. But I kind of put it bluntly to him. I'm like, how concerned are you as a member of the Democrat Party that there will be members possibly in your caucus that are very anti-Israel, that are very progressive, just like nearby in the 11th congressional district, you have Uribe Media. You have very possibly Adam Hamway winning in CD 12. I mean, what does it feel like? And I asked him, as a Democrat, they're going to have like these radical, progressive candidates. In some cases, 2 candidates have been very anti-Israel, have been known to hang out with some very anti-Semitic people. As I mentioned, Linda Sarsour. Folks, don't take my word for it. Google Linda Sarsour, and you can look, read it for yourself. I mean, she was there at Hamway's victory party, and when you have her and other radicals there, whether it's screaming Allahu Akbar or whatever the case may be, like, I mean, it's a bad look. And for someone like Josh Gottheimer, who's a pretty moderate Democrat, as he said, he's a common sense Democrat. He's very in the middle. That has to be alarming, I think, to some of the establishment Democrats.
Yeah, and I do think that the problem of Hamway's existence in Congress is going to be one that's going to be felt outside of his district. I think it's one where he's going to be a poster child that's held up by conservative, maybe Republican Jews who want to peel off, say to other Jews, you should not be voting Democratic right now. I see the pain on Josh Gottheimer's face, or on another great candidate in that race in the 12th district was Dr. Cohn, the mayor of East Brunswick. Yeah. He really seemed to struggle with this turn that his party has made right now. Hamway really almost couldn't even say that Israel had a right to exist. He really had a hard time saying that during the debate that we moderated and during the campaign at large. And I don't know, maybe he does believe that, but he really didn't want to get off that off that message. And so he was very careful about what he would put on their record and what he wouldn't put on the record. And I think this is we just talked a little while ago about the split on the Republican side. Democrats have this split too right now, and they're trying to reconcile it. And I think it's costing them some support, maybe not in whether or not Hamilton will be elected, but in seats across the country where it's more divided.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, while Democrats have to feel a little giddy going to November, obviously, during every cycle, the opposing party tends to have a real puncher's chance, as they say, about reclaiming a certain chamber. I don't see it in the Senate. I think Republicans will hold on to the Senate barely. But in the House, I mean, there's a very real possibility that Democrats could flip it. But as you mentioned, some districts maybe aren't winnable, depending on how progressive or radical the candidate would be. Clearly, in the 12th congressional district, which is a pretty safe blue, district, it'll be interesting to see what Democrats come out to vote, because again, between now and November, I'm fairly certain that his Republican opponent, and of course, whatever media is going to cover this race, is going to raise those questions, and at some point he has to answer. Even if in a debate setting, you have to answer ties to that shake from the 1993 center bombing, certainly having radicals like Linda Sarsour. Listen, you got some really crazy people in that watch party. They're screaming some things that if you're a Democrat, if you're a moderate, middle of the road, blue collar Democrat, you have to be concerned. Like, is this going to? Sure, during the primary they come out, but are the sort of traditional Democrats maybe staying home because this is a guy that's far too radical?
Yeah, and so I think there's a couple things that we have to remember about Hamilton. He is a trauma surgeon.
Yeah.
He has traveled around the world, both in the he's a military veteran. He was an Army doctor for a long time. He has done service to this country. He helped save Tammy Duckworth's life. He's done humanitarian work around the world. So I think it's important to recognize that by all accounts, these questions about his Al-Qaeda links, it's about an organization that he went and did humanitarian work for that was later found to have links to Al-Qaeda. That's a very real question, and it's one that he should answer, but it's in the context of the humanitarian work he was doing, the medical work that he was doing. So I think it's important to remember that. On the other hand, I agree with you. I was really troubled by reading his testimony in the Blind Cheeks trial, where he traveled around with him. He was a young person. He said, look, he was an elder in my community. I was providing translation services. Well, you said, Dr. Hamilton, that he was preaching jihad all the time. Why did that make you feel inspired to follow him around? That's what I wanted to hear from him, and that's what he didn't really get into. And at some point, he'll feel like he has to answer that. I don't know, but the pressure is not such that he's had to answer it so far.
Yeah, and also working for a nonprofit that, I mean, sooner or later, once it's discovered it's a front for Al-Qaeda, Micah, I mean, that's a bad look. And again, it seems like,
for sure,
it seems like some Democrats, operatives or whoever in CD12 don't care. I mean, it seems like almost like, and again, and I don't want to beat a dead horse about this, but it just seems that the TDS is really strong in some districts. Like, it doesn't matter about maybe how questionable the Democrat is. It's all about, hey, we just want to stick it to the president. We want to get Republicans out of power. And it doesn't matter if the candidate has some questionable ties. I mean, we're seeing that. You mentioned Maine. I mean, there's a Senate candidate in Maine that, it's still very questionable, but it seems like some Democrats are embracing some.
Yeah, no, now I will say, and I don't want to speak for what the progressives are feeling about Plattner or what they're feeling about Hamilton, but I don't know that it's Trump deranged. I don't know that it's their opposition to Trump. Maybe it is, and maybe you'd argue that. But I also think that they do really represent some very progressive policies on taxation, on tax the rich, on Medicare for all, whatever it happens to be, right? And so I don't know if they're excited about these two because they're going to stand up to Trump or because they're championing policies that they have in common with the progressive wing. I'm not sure.
It'll certainly be interesting to see what happens in the next few months and the way that race is characterized in the 12th congressional district. Moving north a little bit, a very different Democrat, in smoke clear and the dust settle, as they say, in the 7th congressional district. Tom Kean has an opponent now, and that's former helicopter pilot, Jesus Christ, as if I need to hear that commercial again.
If it worked once, it'll work again, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
With Becca Bennett, obviously not a radical far left Democrat like Adam Hamway. Certainly, nothing with questionable ties or associations. But she too is kind of in a pickle a little bit. CD7 is a very interesting district. 2 years ago, Tom Kean won pretty decisively over Sue Altman. There by 5 points. Obviously, there's a lot to be said about Tom Kean right now. His camp is alleging that he'll be there to put some votes down in Congress coming up on June 30th. We'll see.
Right.
But again, Rebecca Bennett, a mom, a helicopter pilot, trying to come across as a moderate in a district that leans Republicans somewhat, barely by 100,000 something voter.
That's right. Yep.
How did you see that race when it came to all those candidates in the Democrat Party in CD7?
It's an interesting, you mentioned earlier Sue Altman. She ran in this district 2 years ago and really tried to present a much more moderate version of her views because she knew it was a more conservative district, a more middle of the road moderate district. And then I think part of that is what tripped her up when she moved to the 12th this time, because she had taken all those moderate positions 2 years ago. And so I think it highlights the difference in the districts. Rebecca Bennett, by all accounts, comes out of the moderate wing of her party. She comes out of the foreign policy wing of her party, if you will. These are the candidates like Abigail Spanberger and Mikey Sherrill, who are military veterans, like Rebecca Bennett, who are not necessarily out of the progressive side. We'll see. You're right. In order to get elected, she didn't put a whole lot of progressive creds on the bone there. She tried to not do that, I would say, because in order to win her primary, because she knows that the less she is tied to those, then the less that Tom Kean can tie her to those come the fall. And so I think she was fairly successful in that way. She raised the most money in the race. And so she had the ability to control her message. There was anti-Bennett money being spent in this primary. This was some of that troublemaking Republican money, PAC money, where they're trying to pick their opponent. Again, everything is fair play. So pick the weakest opponent. That did not succeed. It didn't work. She won in spite of that. So she didn't have to really say anything, I think, that was really troubling or that could come back to haunt her. We'll see. We'll see what Kean. I think at this point, Kean is so far on the defensive about his absence and the way he's handled his absence that he's got to get off of that first. And we'll see if that's old news by the fall. It certainly has not played out the way he wanted it to, with all the mystery, all the up in the air, all the questions not being answered about what's going on. This has dominated the discussion about this race for months. And a lot of the raters of this race, the people who measure the competitive races, have moved this district over to the Democratic side because they say that Kean has a lot to answer for that he has not yet answered for.
And certainly in the next few months, I think it's fair to say, though, Micah, Bennett has to play a little bit of a careful game here. We don't want to sort of attack him also because of an illness.
No.
So, listen, I think it's fair to say about, if you elect a representative to the House, I mean, they have to be accessible and available to vote. That has not happened for Tom Kean. We'll see, obviously, when he resumes on June 30th, what votes he takes, and certainly what the Bennett camp will do to scrutinize those votes again between now and November. It's one of the more closely watched races in New Jersey because of how close it is. Again, barely over 100,000 more registered Republicans in that district than Democrats. We'll see. And as we already know, Bennett can raise money. I'm sure the DNC on a national level will be very interested in trying to win that House seat in a climate where Democrats feel a little optimistic about regaining the House. We'll find out. Another race, obviously, that was interesting during the primary was in the 9th congressional district. Obviously, Nellie Poe now has a Republican challenger in Rosemary Pino. She narrowly squeaked by Tiffany Burris, and for anyone that knows, obviously Tiffany Burris is an attorney, but also the wife of Super Bowl champion and former New York Giant, Maxwell Burris. A little bit of money spent in that race as well. Rosemary was able to squeak by.
Yep.
Nellie Poe, again, Micah, not an impressive voting record. It just seems that she's just sort of going along with the crowd. Hey, if the Democrats are going to Delaney Hall and bitching and moaning, she's happy to go along. But not the most vocal member of the House of Representatives or the caucus. Sure, she's a Latina.
I
Sure,
think that's fair. I do. I think that's fair. She was never out in front
yeah.
in her 30 years in the state legislature. And, she's not been out front in the House either. But you're absolutely right about that. I think this district went onto Republican radar screens when Donald Trump carried it in 2024. And then, you look at the landscape and you say, all right, every district that Trump carried that's represented by a Democrat, that is a target. And so people thought, okay, this is going to be a top Republican target. Well, that was 2024. It was a presidential electorate, presidential voters. Doesn't mean that those are going to be the same races where the Democrats are going to be vulnerable in 2026. Not a presidential year, not presidential voters. And so I think it's a different dynamic. Could this district go back into the column again? Sure, it could. It could go back into the competitive column again. I don't know that that's where it is right now. I don't know that the Republicans are on the expanse or riding high with Hispanic voters the way that they were 2 years ago.
No, that's a fair point. And again, I think one of the things I was angry about during the 24 cycle was that the RNC, had they just pumped in $1 million into that race, they could have won because Billy Prempe, Marine, only lost by 2 points.
Absolutely.
And he made incremental improvements in the last cycle there. But as you mentioned, a very different electorate in the same county. A lot of the support that the president was able to garner in 24 may have eroded by now. Who knows with Nellie Poe? I'm pretty sure Democrats are going to put some money into that race. They don't want to make Nellie Poe vulnerable.
Right.
Near, next door in CD 10, LaMonica MacGyver obviously ran unopposed. We're going to see who her Republican challenger will be. But but Micah, again, I look at someone like MacGyver and some other Democrats like Frank Pallone, and we'll talk about him in CD 6 in a minute. But it just seems like a lot of the Democrats going to Delaney Hall, Micah, this is just feel like a lot of performative bullshit, in my opinion.
So,
and the reason I say this is because it's, again, Delaney Hall has been around as a detention center for illegals since 2011 during the Obama administration. And now it seems like, okay, they can celebrate that the potential center in Roxbury has been scrapped. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to, all those detainees that could have maybe been moved to Roxbury will just be moved out of the state. So, okay, cool. Like, congratulations. You might just have them moved to like New Mexico.
Yeah. No, it became a shorthand. To go to Delaney Hall meant that you were standing up. It meant that you were being counted. It meant that look, do I think that Rob Menendez was ever in trouble in this primary? No, I don't. But was it a way for him to very quickly go and say, not quickly, he spent a lot of time there, but was it a way for him to go and burnish his progressive credentials so that he would not have a vulnerability with the progressive wing of his party? Absolutely. He was able to very quickly establish himself and say, you know what? I'm one of you because I'm out there fighting every day. I'm a progressive. I'm doing the things that progressives are doing. And so it was a convenient way to do that. But you're right. I mean, whether or not somebody is detained here or somewhere else, does that make a difference? It might if your family is nearby, but otherwise you're still detained.
And it seems that when she got arrested last year in May of 2025 outside Delaney Hall, it seems like, again, I'm not sure what the litigation aspect of this is going to be moving into now, though, Mike, for Representative MacGyver.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, I'm not saying you. I mean, this generally for anybody watching. You can play semantics all day long, but the minute you come into contact with a federal agent,
right,
it's a crime. So I'm not saying, listen, do I want to see her in jail? I mean, obviously, now that she's pregnant, probably not. But I think that there's a very real optic, though, Micah, that it just seems like some within the Democrat Party have sort of been encouraging and almost deputizing people to be really disruptive. And in some cases, as we've seen, it's not bullshit, but violent towards federal agents. Like, who in their right mind thinks it's a good idea to get in the face of law enforcement?
Right.
It doesn't come with consequences.
Well, certainly not everyday New Jerseyans. Don't support that. Don't like that. Don't want to see that. And so Democrats are running a dangerous tightrope when they are trying to satisfy that, while they're also trying to not get the public too pissed off at them either. And I think that New Jersey Democrats would do very well to remember that that's not something that's supported and has ever been supported by most New Jerseyans. Most New Jerseyans want to see a peaceful New Jersey. They don't want to see a New Jersey that's, riots breaking out and erupting on their streets. That's not something any of us are happy about.
And by the way, I mean, a lot of New Jerseyans, I agree with you, aren't happy about out-of-state protesters coming as far
right, that's right,
in Oregon to, again, so it's not conservatives like me that are sort of feeding, this conspiracy theory of out-of-state,
Mikey Sherrill cited that too. Governor Sherrill cited the same thing, said that this was out-of-state agitators. Absolutely, yeah.
Now, obviously, during this primary season, we also saw the Republican Party select a candidate for the U.S. Senate to challenge Cory Booker in the upcoming election in November. Interesting, though, Micah, where when the dust settled, a guy that was not liked by the establishment, Republican Party in New Jersey, won by a pretty handy margin in Justin Murphy. And again, just like you, another guy who I envy with a gray head of hair. I mean, my God, you guys out there in Central Jersey, my goodness.
That's right. That's right.
Maybe it's the water. I got to wash my hair down there. The bottom line is that Justin Murphy cleared the field, obviously, on a lot of guys. Certainly, former journalist Alex Sedan, who many thought was going to win that race handily. Certainly, law enforcement officer Richard DeFore was also in that race as well. What do you think contributed to Justin Murphy winning as decisively as
It's a tough one because this was a race, almost a textbook of how do voters make up their minds when they don't know a whole lot about any of the candidates. And, I agree with you. I've worked with Alex Sedan for years. There's a lot of candidate quality there for sure. But how much did rank and file voters get to see of that? And so none of them raised any money, $50,000. Dr. Rebovich raised $150,000. That was the most in the race. That doesn't allow you to get out any kind of a statewide message at all. And so voters knew next to nothing. So what did they go on? And we weren't sure whether it was going to be slogans, ballot slogans next to your name. What kind of clues were you going to look for? It turned out, and this is not any respect at all to Justin Murphy, it turned out that ballot position had a lot to do with it. That if you were first or second, as Justin Murphy was in 15 of the 21 counties, then you're going to do pretty well. And that's exactly what happened. He won all of those counties and then some, or he came in first and second in all of those counties and then some beyond that. And so it turned out that ballot position is really important. I think party leaders on both sides are starting to realize that ballot position is really determinative in these maybe lower profile races where we don't know a whole lot else. School board races, we've seen this for a long time. If you're first, if you're second, or if you're at the bottom, that has a lot to do with whether or not you're going to win. And so I'm not saying that's all there was to Justin Murphy's win, but certainly that helped him a lot.
No, absolutely. And we'll see how he does raising money, which is going to be the biggest challenge, if not one of them.
Yeah.
This race where, let's be honest though, Micah, there aren't a lot of, I think, big tech donors in New Jersey with deep pockets are going to look at this race and say, yeah, maybe I want to give money to Justin Murphy. I like Justin. I know him. He's going to be on the show coming up in July, so I'm looking forward to that. But, Cory Booker already has a $25 million war chest to work with. Now, again, I'm sure he'd like to not use all of it. He'd like to start using it in Iowa, New Hampshire, as obviously
right.
president.
Yep.
But, again, Michael, let's call balls and strikes. I don't think Cory Booker's been a good senator here. Doesn't introduce any legislation, loves the performative nonsense that he has excelled at, hyperbole. I just don't look at him as a really good, I guess, public servant in the Senate. But it doesn't matter. It seems like the vote blue, no matter who crowd seems to love him for whatever reason.
So what I will say is this, and I'm not deflecting your question. So
No, sure.
bring me back to it. But here's what I think is the real problem for challengers. And this is not just true of Justin Murphy. This is true of any challenger. So your opponent has a $25 million head start, and you are starting from zero. And you have from now until November to catch up. But guess what? Cory Booker is not stopping raising money in the meantime, right? So he's got a tremendous head start. He's already at the finish line, and he's not going to stop raising money as you try to play catch up with him. And as you say, you don't really have great prospects to try and get even with him. Do you have to have $25 million? No, you don't. Do you have to have several $1 million to thoroughly communicate your message? Absolutely. And where are the prospects for that? Where are the chances? And if you ever did get off the ground, if you're Murphy, wouldn't Booker just have the ability to raise that much more and out communicate you that much more? And so it's really it's such a loaded system against challengers. Unfortunately, the advantages of incumbency are very strong. This is just one of them, but I think it's really one of the most pernicious ones, is because time is more important than money in my book, and you have such a head start on time that the challenger can never catch up with you.
No, absolutely right on that. And you sort of mentioned about the way these primary races have sort of evolved. Let's be fair. I mean, we're still sort of in the infancy stage of a post-line world in New Jersey, where, again, if you had the county line for decades, I mean, you pretty much assured a win in your respective primary. Obviously, we've seen that's not the case recently in season 11.
Yeah.
We just started in season 12. We saw it, obviously, in Republican primaries. Certainly, we're never going back to a county line.
No.
And I think for some people that's a good thing. But as you mentioned, I think ballot placement really goes under the radar here. I think that is a significant barrier that candidates moving forward are going to have to find a way to overcome one way or the other.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk among party leaders right now. Let's not just give that away. Let's just let's figure out if there's a way to randomize it, for example, so that one candidate just doesn't have all of the advantage of the top ballot position, but everybody has, if there were 13 candidates in the race as there was in the 12 district, everybody has they're listed first in every 13th ballot, right? Because if you randomize, then you're literally, the computer is changing the ballot order in an even way so that you're listed first in the same amount of times that everybody else is listed first. And that's an interesting concept, and it certainly would be the fairest way to do it. People that we know and respect, like Brian Stack, say, wait a minute, I want a fixed ballot position so that I can educate voters on, you have to go to 5B if you want to vote for me, and you have to check the box 5B so that you can make sure you're voting for me. That is a fundamental difference. Do you want a fixed position, or do you want a rotating position so that one person, one candidate doesn't have the prohibitive advantage of ballot primacy? It can be worth between 5 and 7% in a race, according to all the research, and that can be determinative when we don't know a lot else about the candidates.
And if you're worried about ballot placement, again, it's important. The book, by the way, if you're just joining us live, like, comment, and share today's episode. My guest today is the distinguished director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics, Micah Rasmussen, joins us live here on Real Talk. Again, 5 seconds. It takes to like, comment, share, and show your support for fearless independent journalism here on Real Talk. You mentioned about ballot placement. It takes me back to last summer, Michael. What, for example, here during all the highly contested assembly races, for example, in Hudson County, where I live in the 33rd legislative district, State Senator Brian Stack ran two assembly candidates against others. And when you look at the mailing coming to your home, you saw that the ballot placement was like they were highlighting different parts of the ballot as to where the assembly candidates were located. And let's be fair, for a lot of New Jerseyans, especially the elderly, when you're usually just walking into, open the curtain, you look at the screen and you look at where your candidates are, you have to start sort of searching for where the candidates are. And again, this is where it's almost incumbent on elected officials, election workers, the county clerk or county register to educate voters. Also, like, by the way, this is where your candidate is on the ballot.
Yeah.
Arguably, is there a magic wand to fix this?
Well, again, I think the only thing that can fix it is to share that top ballot position among all the candidates. That's the only thing that doesn't give the entire advantage to one candidate. That's the only thing. I think if you randomize it so that candidates are listed in different order depending on which ballot, that would be the way that you could fix it. But listen, the days that a party can just skate on the Democratic label or the Republican label, if they were in a Republican county or a Democratic county, are gone. There was a really interesting race in Georgia in their primary election just this year, where they actually elect some Supreme Court justices in their primary election. Kind of an odd thing. We would never do that in New Jersey. But even though a lot more Democrats were showing up in Georgia because it was their primary and because they're energized this year, they didn't run with partisan labels for the Supreme Court. And so the Republicans wound up winning pretty handily those Supreme Court seats because Democrats didn't really know these are the Democrats and these are the Republicans. And so they wound up voting for Republicans, maybe names that they knew, maybe the names of incumbents, maybe ballot position. So again, this is really interesting stuff where voters don't have those visual cues that they have always had. And we're going to see what that means going forward. But I certainly don't think that the parties are done trying to figure out, this is just the way it's going to be. They're going to try and figure out whether or not there's anything they can do to spread the advantage or keep the advantage even or stop other candidates from getting the advantage ahead of them.
3-1 advantage down in the 6th congressional district. Both candidates ran unopposed. Their primaries. We'll see that military mom and wife Hillary Hersing, former defense employee, will be challenging Frank Pallone. And Micah, if anyone embodies the definition of a career politician, a guy who's been in Washington for far too long, and really is a corporate Democrat, it's Frank Pallone down there. And obviously, he has an enormous registration advantage. Hillary's been running a good campaign, a very positive one. Again, a big mountain to climb for her, but not necessarily unwinnable in a district where Frank Pallone is not very accessible. He raises a lot of money, sure, but a guy that, again, is also into the performative aspects of his brand. And, what are you hearing about the 6th congressional district from that?
Well, he definitely is losing every year that he runs in the Democratic primary. He's getting less and less support among Democrats. He fell into the 60s this year. And that doesn't sound like it's unsafe, and it probably isn't unsafe, but it's a warning sign for him. It's sort of a sign that the party that supports him is, he can't take it for granted, that he can't just assume that it's always going to be there. And what it was a progressive who mounted a very online, very social media challenge. And obviously he still beat that opponent like 2-1, but the opponent was able to get 35% of the vote. And so I think there are warning signs there for somebody who has been around for a long time. You can't just phone it in, you can't just write it in, and you have to get there and do the work and be recognized for doing the work. So I don't think we're necessarily going to, I think the days where somebody just has a 30, 40-year career on autopilot are probably coming to an end. I don't know that we're necessarily going to see that.
It'll be interesting for sure in CD6. Moving a little bit further south, I had the chance to moderate a debate in the Republican primary in the congressional district between Michael McGuire and Jason Cullen to see who would challenge freshman Herb Conway in the third congressional district. I would argue that of the 9 Democrats in the House that are incumbents, though, Micah, it would seem that Herb Conway should be the most vulnerable. He's a freshman, doesn't have much of a voting record to speak of, but I mean, part of the reason New Jersey is expensive and has been expensive for years is because he was one of those career Democrats in the legislature in Trenton. Again, Michael McGuire came out of that race pretty decisively. He'll be challenging Herb Conway in the 3rd congressional district in November. Again, try to talk me out of this. I think Herb Conway is really vulnerable, but again, it's going to take money. It's going to take a ground game. Do you think McGuire has that against a guy who is vulnerable compared to his counterparts in the Democrat Party?
Well, here's the case for Conway. The case for Conway is that the district is very Democratic. It has been drawn that way. We have to remember this district was drawn for Andy Kim, right? The lines were drawn in 2021 when Andy Kim was representing that district. And so the case is that this is a pretty Democratic district. It's got Democratic parts of Mercer County in it. It's got Democratic parts of Burlington County, and it's got a slice of Monmouth County as well, which is not so Democratic, but it's the more middle of the road part of Monmouth County. And so that's the case that Conway is not really in trouble. The case for McGuire is that Republicans nationally have raised a boatload more money than the Democrats, and maybe they are going to be looking for places to spend it. I don't know if they have an embarrassment of riches and they're just going to spread their money around everywhere. But if McGuire is well funded, then that's where he could make the case against Conway. We'll see what happens. it's a tough district money-wise too, because you have the Philadelphia TV market and you have the New York TV market. A lot of Republicans complained in the last map-making process. Boy, does this district go from the Philadelphia side of things up to the New York side of things very quickly, and it's a pretty long district, but that makes it harder to spend the money in that district too.
Absolutely, especially in CD3 where it covers some like 5 municipalities in Mercer County, I think 7 in Ocean, obviously more than 30 in Burlington County. So yeah, you're right. It is very spread out there, and we'll see what Conway can do in terms of he has a voting record now. Been kind of quiet on the front. You saw him at Delaney Hall recently to cut a promo, but he's been very quiet on whether it's about the Abolish ICE crowd that seems to be sort of resonating within the Democrat Party. Also about spending. It'll be interesting. I think
he's not a full-throated progressive by any means. He has always been a moderate guy in the legislature. I mean, we can argue about that, right? Obviously, but he's not been on the vanguard of his party, certainly, and is more comfortable in the moderate wing of his party. And so I don't think he's drawn that kind of lightning rod either in terms of firing up his base or in terms of firing up the Republican base either. He's just sort of, I mean, we talk about moderation as a virtue, but at this point in our politics, in our times, maybe it's not a virtue. Maybe it just means you excite nobody.
Listen, it was certainly a lot of interesting districts for sure coming up this November, Micah. Speaking of the legislature, obviously less than 2 weeks to go. The state Senate and state assembly under New Jersey law have to pass a budget, which then has to be signed by the governor no later than 11:59 p.m. on June 30th. Otherwise, if it is not signed by the governor, the state will go into a shutdown. We've seen that a couple times. We saw that under Governor John Corzine in 2006. We saw it briefly under Governor Chris Christie in 2017. During the 8 years of Phil Murphy, a lot of stuff right up against the buzzer early on with, at the time, State Senate President Steve Sweeney, certainly Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin. Very different people now. Scutari is the Senate President. Craig Coughlin is the Assembly Speaker. But, I think about that preliminary budget address by the governor just a few months back in February, and you could see her talking, and when she was taking those little backhanded jabs at port or, projects, you could see, Scutari and Coughlin kind of look at each other like, is she talking shit about us here?
Yeah.
It seemed like that was the case. What are you hearing about the rumblings in Trenton where, the governor thinks it's okay to cut, Meals on Wheels for seniors, but mysteriously, Micah, $20 million is available to help illegals, specifically when it comes to a defense fund for them fighting deportations. Micah, it makes you scratch your head sometimes.
So pork is as a concept, right? As a, to label it all pork, she's absolutely right that that's an abused process. It's an opaque process. It's a process that people don't understand. But here's the case for pork. A, it gets legislators on board, right? And that's why it's always been done in Washington and in Trenton, right? Because it helps you line up votes, right? If you bring home some bacon, then that's a reason to vote for the budget and to go be able to say, here's what I got, right? So that's why it's always been done. Now, can you point to excesses? Absolutely, you can point to excesses. Is it a bad process? Yes, it is. Why should voters in one school district get relief that voters in another district don't get, right? Just because they're connected, they have connected legislators, or they don't have connected legislators. But the part that we're missing when we say we want to reform that process is that the legislature is going to have its say. They are going to either sign off on a budget or not sign off on a budget. And the other problem with attacking pork, of course, is that you're right, is that number one, there are pork projects that are very defensible. Meals on Wheels. I've heard developmentally disabled school. There are plenty of worthy projects that do get funded through those legislator imperatives. And not only are you opposing those because those now become what you're saying shouldn't be funded, but you also are comparing it to everything you funded, including funding for immigrant lawyers. And so it's a tough juxtaposition to make. Oh, we can't afford this, but we can afford this. It's you've set yourself up for that. And it's the kind of first year stuff, first budget stuff. It's almost inevitable. We talked about this before. She had plenty of Trenton veterans that came on board with her staff, but there are a lot more Washington people that came to Trenton with her that didn't necessarily understand the way that business was done in Trenton. And so now they are not at the point of having a finish line. They don't have a budget written. I'm not saying that they're going to run into a problem. I'm not going to say that they're not going to get across the finish line next week, but they're not there yet. There's not a budget that's been introduced. They have a lot of work to do between now and next Tuesday. We'll see if they get there. Of course, there's not a whole lot that's threatened by a shutdown. We've limited the amount of impact that the public even feels from a shutdown in New Jersey. So I don't know, in a low information environment, low media environment, how much the public will even notice if there's a shutdown. We'll see what happens.
And you mentioned obviously projects that are maybe on the chopping block. Obviously, if you're Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin, and by the way, Michael, would you just love to be a fly on the wall last week when Governor Sherrill met with Scutari and Coughlin over dinner? I mean, I would, first of all, who picked up the check? I mean, we all did. Essentially, we all did. But I'd like to see who. I'd like to see who pulled out that wallet.
Well, somebody said Brett Johnson. I know he's been on, but he right away afterwards, somebody said to him, "We didn't go out to dinner." I assume they didn't want to answer that question, but they said we met, but we didn't have dinner.
But it'd be nice to see who pulled out their wallet and what they were saying. But obviously, Save NJ is Assembly Speaker Coughlin's baby.
Yes.
Obviously, that's seniors in New Jersey with a property tax relief.
Stay in their home. Yep.
But again, I think the argument is that you're an elderly household with over $500,000 of your net income. I mean, maybe those aren't, again, I don't want to take away someone's property tax relief, but perhaps those are not the elderly that we have to be sort of concerned with.
Right.
It's a property tax relief for the rest of the state, for example, up here in Hudson County. I mean, it's arguably some of the highest property taxes in the state anywhere. Now, where I live, my state senator is also my mayor. He does an excellent job at keeping property taxes reasonable, but that's not everywhere, Mike. And I think that's a concern about saving.
Yeah. And, so I assume because of what you're talking about, that they will work it out between them. The Coughlin, who is very near and dear, this project, this program is very near and dear to his heart. He ran on it 2 years ago. His legislature ran on it 2 years ago. He doesn't want to see it gutted. But I also assume that you're right, that the cuts that she's looking for, that Governor Sherrill is looking for, there will be some kind of an agreement they can come to over what is still middle class relief. There's a lot of room between $250,000 and $500,000 to come to an agreement, and I assume that they will.
So another component of Governor Sherrill's tenure right now, as brief as it is, right, really when the entities. And it's World Cup fever, Mike. I'm a big football fan because it's football. Yeah. That's the correct name. It's football.
Right.
But certainly a lot of fever going around New Jersey. Obviously, a lot of the microscope will be on her about a problem that she inherited from Governor Murphy. When it comes to transit.
Absolutely.
Certainly very different than going to a Giants and Jets game during the season where you can park, you can tailgate. That obviously was completely discouraged, at least here.
Yeah.
I can't speak about Philadelphia because I know fans that went down to that dump of a building down there at Lincoln Financial Field, and you're able to park, you're able to tailgate, you're able to at least be in the vicinity. In case of MetLife, you either have to rely on your transit train or buses. What are you hearing thus far about the grade when it comes to NJ Transit during this World Cup?
So a couple things. I am amazed that former Governor Murphy and First Lady Sammy Murphy, former First Lady Sammy Murphy, have not gotten more of a ration of criticism over just dumping this in the state's lap. It was not a good deal when you, as you just said, when you compare what New Jersey is able to do versus Philadelphia, or even versus New York with the free tickets that Mondami was able to obtain, that she had to go chasing down from sponsors at some point. We did not get treated the same as our neighbors, and so that was something that I'm really surprised. She exercised some restraint in not just dumping the fault in Murphy's lap, and I think think maybe to her credit that she just didn't say, blame it on my predecessor. Of course, the same party, so maybe that's the reason too. But I'm surprised at that. The other thing is that I think not enough people at the beginning were taking the New Jersey Transit tickets. They were the ride. They were trying to find their own rides because that was expensive, right? So we had a lot of backup at the self-drive sites, the Uber sites, that kind of thing, because they were expensive tickets. So that grade could be better. But here's where I think Governor Sherrill gets a little bit of credit in voters' minds. We'll see how it plays out, or in taxpayers' minds more specifically. The reason why those ticket prices were what they were was because she wasn't willing to stick that on the taxpayers' backs, right? She said that's not an acceptable answer. And so somebody else is going to have to pay for that. If sponsors want to pay for that, that's fine. If riders want to pay for that, ticket holders want to pay for that, that's fine. But we're not sticking New Jersey residents with the bill for that. And so I think she gets some credit for that. Ultimately, the decision that she made there is what the rest of the response flows from, that decision to make those tickets as expensive as she did.
No, absolutely. And it's certainly worth covering and discussing in the weeks ahead, obviously, as the World Cup continues until the finale coming up on July 19th, coincidentally, at MetLife Stadium. I'm sorry, New York, New Jersey Stadium. It's allowed for sponsorship names to be on the stadium during the World Cup. But, you mentioned about coverage, and I really want to pick your brain about this because, you do appear on a lot of shows. And really, Mike, I think we're at maybe not necessarily a crossroads, but maybe where the rubber meets the road, as they say, when it comes to establishment media, and the way that media has evolved in New Jersey. Obviously, for many decades, if not for more than a century, for example, here by me, the Jersey Journal for over 120 years was a staple of a print and online newspaper here in Hudson County. Now, of course, statewide with Star Ledger, you have the Morning Record, you have the Front Press, whatever. Those have slowly but surely, obviously, converted to an all-digital platform. But we've also seen the rise of a lot of local news sites. For example, here in Hudson County, the New Jersey Times, like your friend Aaron Morrill, the editor-in-chief, John Hines, the editor of Hudson County View. There are tap-intos and patches throughout all 21 counties. We see, for example, in Middlesex County, my good friend and fellow Rutgers alumnus, Charlie Cradaville, Brother Today, all the way down in Mount Holly, the Mount Holly Reporter. We've seen, obviously, local news has evolved. We've seen the rise of podcasts. And Micah, isn't it interesting that for the longest time, people like me would get scorned because, Fernando Uribe, that's not real journalism. That's not journalism. That's just podcasting. I think it's fair to say that maybe I'm getting the last laugh here, where I'm still surviving while maybe long-time establishment print and online platforms are not getting the viewership or fans that they once did. Where do you see the trajectory of media right now in New Jersey?
Well, I don't think there's any question that you're getting the last laugh. And the reason for that is because in terms of what we used to say about real journalists, real media, real newspaper was the print copy. But the print copies have all gone away. Nobody's got a print copy anymore, right? We can measure the number of print copies in the state maybe by the thousands at this point. The Ledger does not print a print copy anymore. And so everybody is now an online journalist, same as you, right? And so we are all in that medium. I don't count myself, but whether you're writing for the Ledger or whether you're writing for for one of these local publications that's filling the void, they are all on the same footing and in the same boat now. So the landscape has changed dramatically, and it will continue to change. It will continue to go in the direction of these scrappy newcomers that are finding a void and trying to fill a void. And it's going to be less expensive operations. Listen, even the future of New Jersey PBS is now in the hands of Montclair, which is going to be somewhat of a shoestring operation compared to what it once was. And so even the sort of mainstream is now scrappy too. And so we're all in this same boat, and this is where people are going to have to move. I don't know that readers have moved entirely yet. But when people realize we're no longer getting that information that we once were, they're going to look for it somewhere else. And this is where they're going to turn. This is where they're going to be looking.
And you mentioned the current state again of media, and longtime journalist Brendan Flanagan raised some concerns.
I think so. Yep.
And I have to sort of express them too, Mike. And again, I try to be fair and kind on this show. It doesn't always work out that way. But, I look at, woke state over there in Montclair, and if they're going to have a say about NJPBS moving forward, it's a very progressive campus, very progressive people over there at the Center for Cooperative Media. I mean, isn't Brenda right that there is a conflict of interest here, perhaps, and maybe we should be concerned that if our tax dollars are going to be going to this anyway, that an institution that is as far left as woke state over there in Montclair is going to have the oversight over NJPBS. I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, that whether it's a conflict of interest or however you want to phrase it, I'm concerned about that. Having a red flag about this, Micah.
So if you think about just the budget process itself, Montclair is seeking state funding every year, right? Yep. And they're looking for state from the governor, from the legislature. Do they really want to tick off those people that they're looking for funding from? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But that is a fair question to ask. Phil Alongi, who put together the other proposal, wanted to put together an independent proposal, a proposal that would not be reliant I guess he would have been seeking state funding too, but it would not be the same as another state institution running what's supposed to be an independent journalism operation. And so I think those are fair questions. Those are tough questions, important questions. And I hope that we're going to ask them. I'm afraid that we're not. I'm afraid that the decision's been made now. We're going with the shoestring. We're going to see how it goes. It's a 5-year contract. We'll see. But if it doesn't work, if we're not happy with it, one of the things about fairness, one of the things about viewpoint perspective, variety of perspectives, is when you only have 3 journalists, which is what this proposal is, for 3 journalists, I'm not sure that you can get a great diversity of perspectives from that. I'm not sure that how much you're going to get out of that. We'll see what happens, but it certainly can't represent all parts of the spectrum. Only 3 reporters are going to be covering this.
Yeah, again, I'm concerned about that. Again, the devil is in the details. We'll see how it unfolds, as you mentioned, within this next 5-year process. Mike, I'm not sure if you're a betting man. I like to gamble. If you had to put some chips in the middle of the table at 12:01 a.m. July 1st, where is New Jersey?
Where's what?
Where is New Jersey? Is it shut down, or did you have?
Oh! If I had to put chips on the table, I would say that the legislative leaders and the governor will work it out. There will be drama. It's not a done deal. There will be, again, that rookie perspective that we don't control it all. We've got partners in this effort. We don't want to give too much. So there's going to be some tense behind the scenes moments, I think, between now and then. But I assume that they will work it out. I assume all the leaders, Democrats, on the same page, they will figure it out. But we'll see.
Absolutely. I'm with you. I can't call it right now, but less than really 8 days to go, as they say. In this budget process. Before I let you go, Micah, obviously you're always a gentleman to come on. I always really enjoy our conversation. You're such a wealth of knowledge. When we think about the Rebovich Institute moving forward, what are some of obviously we know about July 7th coming up, the big showdown between John Bremnick and Matt Rooney, but what else can we look forward to from the Rebovich Institute during the summer months and going into the fall when the next academic year, the 2026-2027 academic year begins at Rider University?
So one of the things we're doing right now, a big project for the year, is Boys State comes to Rider. And they've been coming to Boys State is sponsored by the American Legion. There are about 800 high school students who come to campus, and it's a government simulation. They form into cities, mythical cities, and they form their government. They choose their charter. They elect their leaders. It's a really neat week-long process where they spend in residence on campus at Rider. And I do a 4-credit an academic credit component of that. So if you want to, there are speakers who come, public officials who come. I'm part of the faculty there. And so if you want to take 3 credits, academic credits, while you're there, you can do that. So that's a big summer offering. It's a big part of what we do. And it's going on this week. It's about 800 high school students who we're working with on campus. It's a big deal. They pretty much take over the campus. As you said, then I'm going to roll into the great Republican debate. And then I'm going to start planning for the fall. And we are hoping that we will have the Senate debate between Justin Murphy and Cory Booker. We'll see. That'll be the big one for this year for New Jersey. It's the only statewide race on the ballot, so we'll see. But we're hoping that maybe we'll have that on campus, God willing, and the candidates accept. We'll be hoping to bring that among other public officials that we bring to campus this fall.
And you're always doing good work with David Wildstein, a big fan of the show, a big friend of the show here. Living good, certainly not just that race, but obviously other House races. I know I'm trying to organize some debates with some congressional districts. We'll see. It's always so demanding, isn't it, Micah? Again, full disclosure for our audience. I mean, when I was looking to plan a debate in the 3rd Congressional District Republican Party primary debate, I mean, talking to you, talking to others about venue.
It's a lot.
It's tedious.
It's a lot. And I could not do it without David Wildstein at the Globe. We are full partners in our debates. And you're absolutely right. Falling on one person, you have the whole thing in your hands. It's tough. I mean, I share that with David. He handles sort of wrangling the candidates. He handles, putting together the book on how to do it and, all that stuff. I handle the physical aspects of it and the crowd, that kind of thing. If we were each one of us doing it on our own, the way you did, to double the work, easily double the work.
To be fair, I mean, I want to give thanks to, I did have some people helping. I had Terry Kane, the chair of the Burlington County Republican Federated Women, obviously other operatives there, Burlington County Executive Director of the GOP there, Bernstein as well. So, I mean, I had a really good team effort. I'm very grateful to them because I could have not done that by myself.
It's a lot.
Down in Burlington County, I needed locals to help me sort of navigate the best venues. We're working on that for the fall, so stay tuned, everybody.
That's great.
That one. But Micah, you're a student of history, and I think I know you're not the biggest sports fan out there, but I still want to pick your brain about this. As you can see, I'm rocking New York versus everybody. A historic moment a couple Saturdays ago when the New York Knicks won their 3rd title. Richard Nixon was present. I think a regular gallon of gas was somewhere between 30 to 39 cents per gallon. That's crazy to think. Obviously,
Bill Bradley was playing on the team then, right?
Yes, Bill Bradley, future U.S. Senator representing New Jersey, was on the team. Obviously, homes were somewhere between $10,000 to $15,000. I mean, think about that today. But certainly a historic moment for New York sports, and North Jersey, New York City, the boroughs, Southern New York State. Maybe not South Jersey was as animated or happy about the Knicks winning. Obviously, being so close to the Philadelphia market, I think
big division. Sports are the biggest North-South division.
Sure, absolutely, and I think that because they're here in the area, there's such a tribalism. You're either a Yankee fan or a Met fan. So if one of the others in the World Series, there's one fan base that's going to be very just apathetic about anything different. Same thing with the Giants and Jets,
right?
Rangers and Islanders to some extent, but no team really unites a region. Up here by me, across the river, New York City, New York State, whatever. Even part of Central Jersey too, like the Knicks did, and their historic win in 5 games. Certainly, I think you can make the case that in the Mount Rushmore of New York sports, it's still Joe Namath, it's the Impossible. It's still Willis Reed and Clyde Frazier from those Knicks teams that won twice in the 70s. But I think you have to kind of make the case here, Micah, that this 2026 New York Knicks team is a historic New York team more than Messier's Rangers.
Yes.
Street, Like Manny and the Giants. Obviously, Derek Jeter and the Yankees. I think you make the case that this New York Knicks team historically now is on that Mount Rushmore of New York sport. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think a lot of things contribute to that. The dry spell, the 50-year dry spell certainly helps. I mean, the fact that that's no question that helps. the fact that the team lost at home one of those games when the whole world was watching and Donald Trump was there, right? And so that was something that contributed to it too, because then the fans get nervous and everybody says, can they pull it off? Are they going to win on the road? And so there were so many things that added to the drama and added to the excitement and, the edge of your seats. And, it's always more exciting when it's not a foregone conclusion. And historically, it was not a foregone conclusion. And, in the midst of the series, it was not a foregone conclusion. So I think it just excited everybody to see things fall the right way, when for so many years it didn't fall the right way.
Absolutely. Well said there. Micah, again, you're always a wealth of information, brother. Certainly, I love the work you do with the Rebovich Institute, the politics, and certainly great political IQ. I mean, I can ask you anything, and you make our episodes so entertaining, so informative, and illuminating. So I really want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for your belief in my brand of journalism. Listen, I'm not everyone's brand of vodka, as they say, but I appreciate you coming on. I'll give you the last word here tonight on Real Talk.
Well, John Bramnick's brand of vodka is not everybody's either. Funny vodka, right? Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if that's everybody's brand of vodka on the 7th. But I love being with you. Love our conversations. Always stimulating. Always give me food for thought. You make me think. You challenge me, and I like that. And we don't always agree, but we always respect each other. And so I can't wait till the next time. Always look forward to it.
I look forward to it as well. Again, happy Father's Day. I know we just talked about at the beginning of the show, and enjoy the rest of the summer. Well, not really. I mean,
you too. Yes, you too.
And have a great one, and we'll talk again soon here on.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Most good stuff there with Micah Rasmussen, the director of the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics at Rider University. For more information, please visit their website, rider.edu, and of course, with the menu, and you'll see all the great events and the great work that he and his students do at the Rebovich Institute for Politics at Rider University. Once again, I want to thank Micah Rasmussen, the director, again, of the Rebovich Institute for Politics, for his appearance this week, and a really illuminating conversation. Again, very insightful. Because folks, when it comes to talk about politics, we have the big minds, the big brains. Certainly, Micah Rasmussen is one of those in New Jersey. I look forward to appearances, and we'll hear back from him later on this summer, if not early in the fall, here on. Folks, again, we appreciate you tuning in here again. It's way past 6 o'clock here, but as you all know, obviously, we appreciate his time here on the program, and certainly all the good stuff that we bring you here, courtesy of Real Talk via TV. Folks, as we all know, it's time for final. And folks, I am the only journalist in New Jersey that calls out the bad actors here. As you can see behind me, this collage is updated regularly. A lot of the faces you're going to recognize, obviously, right? Some useless journalists like Alan Steinberg and Tom Moran, perpetual potheads like Matt Friedman and others. Certainly the apple-picking, paper-pushing government employees that we see there, obviously, that work at different universities. We see them. We know who's there. You can see her right in the picture. Right? Or other sort of overly performative elected officials like Bill Cohen and Joe Quintero and Hoboken on the city council there. Obviously, useless activists like Amy Torres and Eddie Morrissey, Eddie Rosenstein, Caleb Burrell, right? Other useless elected officials like Anthony Maneri out of North Bergen, right? Beta males like Joe Amaditis at Montclair State University. But folks, when I think about bad journalism and bad takes, okay, it's not like I have to try very hard to find them in our media landscape. I really don't have to try very hard, because when it comes to bad takes, I can always rely on Uncle Dave, as you can see there, Slim over there, and Flaquito, okay, Uncle Dave, David Cruz. And of course, I know he looks like he's falling asleep there, Chucky, Charles Stout from the Bergen Record. But it was brought to my attention as they're talking about Delaney Hall and Of course, you know that you can't give TDS children like David Cruz and Charles Stout any sort of rope because they'll find a way to hang him. And on the latest edition of his little Mickey Mouse podcast, which, you know, I'm not sure who's watching it, but as it was brought to my attention, I couldn't help but notice. As they're talking about Delaney Hall and obviously what's going on there, what's been in the news cycle for some months. Check out this take, well, at least the conversation. And by the way, shout out to Aaron Morrill, keep up the good work with the Jersey Times. Again, if you don't read the Jersey Times, do that at jcitytimes.com. Great work there by Aaron Morrill. And of course, there's journalists there and reporters. And of course, I want to give a shout out to Fred Snowflake, the hardest working journalist at Insider NJ, again, who's under the oversight of their general manager, Pete Onelia, friend of the show, friend of mine. Mentioned Pete in a very positive light. Can't say the same for other people in that news site. You know, we got lazy people like Max Pizarro, you know, Prince Valium. Folks, you ever seen Spaceball, the little short haircut? Trust me, put it side by side. Put Prince Valium and Max Pizarro, and trust me, like they're twins separated at birth. But I don't want to get into me. What I want to get into is bad takes by bad journalists in bad faith. And check out what these clowns had to say in their exchange recently on Reporters Roundtable. And again, thank God this show is remote and not in person, like Reporters Roundtable used to be at NJPBS for so many years, especially under the oversight of the go-to media journalism, like Aaron, the guy who I look up to, I'm part of it. And I miss you, Michael, as we'll be unfortunately celebrating 2 years since his passing. But check out this exchange or this conversation between Chucky and Flaco, tú sabes, Flaquito over there, Uncle Dave, on Delaney Hall.
You know, and also a dual-edged sword for the pro-immigrant movement. A lot of them took their stuff and went home once the professional demonstrators came in and turned it into a crazy scene.
I also think, though, despite the cooling down of the temperature, the underlying moral travesty still exists.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've really learned over this, and it's one of the most stubborn, persistent facts, is that majority of people who were in Delaney Hall since March did not have violent criminal records. They were not a threat to society.
Chucky, they're there because they have an order for deportation. They're here illegally. Now, I know at 97 years old, that you struggle with some basic common sense. I get it. We're all going to get there. And I hope I get to live to be 97 like Charles Stein. But at some point, the cognitive decline is really evident here because they do have orders for deportation. They're here illegally, Chuck. So that's where they're at the living home and other detention centers. But again, be it far from me to ever think that Charles Stout likes to excuse criminality. He's made a career out of it. Let's continue.
Other than the fact that they had, minor infractions when they were out in the general population, like I wouldn't say DWI is a minor infraction.
See, folks, that isn't a Freudian slip because that's what Charles Style likes to just push under the rug. When we know that illegals, for example, many illegals have killed Americans because of driving drunk. So listen, shithead, driving drunk isn't a minor infraction. I know that was a Freudian slip by you because that's what you think deep down. You don't think it's a big deal. You don't think it's a big deal that Americans have been killed by illegals that have been driving drunk. This is the level of mierda that Charles Style is. I can't stand this. So when you think about, hey, are there members of the establishment media that are just, I don't know, maybe not genuine or, talking in good faith or acting in good faith? No, you can look at this fucking retard, Charles Style, by saying some of the bullshit that this fucking retard says on a regular basis. Well, let's continue.
And they weren't murder. They were not what people.
They were not the worst of the worst.
Painted. They were not a threat to the public. And
no, Charles, they're here illegally. And in many cases, illegals here do commit crimes and they are a threat to the public. Now, I get it when you live in your cozy little house in Princeton, scratching your nuts, not really doing much work. I get it. You don't think about these things. But for regular New Jerseyans, that is a big deal. And that's why ICE has to do its job. But again, that will require Chucky and Bede to have what's called, wait for it, integrity. We know this sleepy motherfucker doesn't have one. Well, let's continue.
And that there are multiple analyses of that, and that hasn't gone away. And it's still, so if they're not really a threat to society, what are they doing there?
They're there because they're here illegally, you fucking moron. That's the reason. And again, God forbid Uncle Dave corrects him, because Uncle Dave's another one. Sitting at home, scratching his nuts, playing with his dick. Well, then again, Dave would have to find his dick, and that's another conversation. But that's the problem with people like Charles Tyler and David Cruz. They should be intellectually honest, at least be able to say these things out loud. They're there because they're here illegally, Charles. But you, at 97 years old, y ya la mente tuya está ya jodida, you can't even bring yourself to say that out loud, because you too like to coddle illegals, and you too like to coddle criminality. Let's not get it twisted.
That still is the burr under the saddle right now.
Meanwhile, a few Republicans toured a prison in Trenton and
Yeah, and shout out to Assemblyman Paul Kinitra for doing that, for doing your job, David, for doing your job, Charles, because for years, a simple Google search will look, hey, has Charles Style ever written anything about the state of New Jersey prisons? Absolutely fucking not, because Charles Style's fucking useless, because he doesn't do anything. He doesn't, again, folks, sorry to get so angry about this, but you should be angry, because these two idiots have been at the center of why people don't trust establishment media, and why the Bergen record has to be behind a paywall now with NorthJersey.com. Why Uncle Dave doesn't have a job. Okay? That's the reason, folks, because these two clowns for years should have been speaking and writing and reporting about prison conditions. But now all of a sudden, because one Republican lawmaker in Trenton decides to go inspect prisons, oh, now it's performative? Wait for the bullshit.
criticized conditions there. Let me stick with you, Charlie.
Yeah.
Fair of them to contrast it with conditions at Delaney Hall?
First of all, I want to say I'm glad somebody has finally taken the opportunity to shed the light on the almost the Dickensian squalor and conditions of our state prisons.
Yeah, because guess what? You're not going to fucking do it because you're fucking lazy. So let's be honest. Shout out to Paul Kinitra, the assemblyman, for doing your fucking job, Charles, because you're not going to do it. So now you want to kind of like save face about it? Yes, kiss my ass, because no one believes your bullshit.
Fine. But it is an apples to oranges comparison.
No, it's not, Charles. It's not apples to oranges. It's because Paul Kinitra and other lawmakers in Trenton have to do your fucking job because you won't do it because you're fucking lazy. That's wrong.
And as I just mentioned, most of the people in Delaney Hall are being wrenched away from their families without due process.
Oh, really? No due process? It's called an order of deportation. Listen, I'm not an attorney, and neither is Chuck. But folks, there has been due process. If you're here illegally and an order of deportation has been signed, there's your due process, Chuck.
And are not violent. People in Trenton State Prison are convicted of really hideous crimes and violence. So that's number one. And number two, if the Republicans were so concerned about the conditions of prisons, where have they been the last 20 years?
Yeah, I don't know, Chuck, because, guess what? Since Republicans don't have majorities in the legislature, no matter what bills they introduce, it would not have made it past committee or even for a vote because Democrats control the legislature. So spare me your fucking fake outrage about where have Republicans been. They've been trying to pass bills. They've been trying to do work, something you don't know anything about, right? So spare me the bullshit about where Republicans been. Republicans have been in Trenton talking about this for decades. Okay, it's Democrats under John Corzine and that legislature during those years that abolished the death penalty, right? Which I'm sure you were in favor of. Did you ever once write an article about, I don't know, maybe we should keep capital punishment in New Jersey? But no, not a peep from Chucky, because again, Chucky would rather virtue signal. That's what he's good at, if not anything.
I went back on Robert Auth, is an assemblyman from Bergen County. I went back and looked at his record. He hasn't put in one corrections reform bill since since 2018. I didn't go totally all the way back, but
Wow, you actually did some work. Y ese milagro, porque tú eres un vago. You don't do shit. But I'm surprised people lifted a finger to move the mouse and click on a link.
I think it's pretty clear that they didn't really care about the prisons. They only see it now as an opportunity to kind of stick it to the Democrats as a way to, point out their quote unquote hypocrisy.
Well, this is whataboutism.
No, it's not a whataboutism, with all respect to Aaron. But back to Chucky. Again, Chucky, if Republicans wanted to have any meaningful prison reform, guess what? It wouldn't go through them because they don't have majorities in the state Senate or the state assembly. Okay, so whether it's, someone like Robert Alt or others, they're powerless because they can't do anything in Trenton. But did Charles Stout once write about it? Uncle Dave, in his 50 years of journalism, whatever, right now that he's like 89, 90 years old, you think Uncle Dave ever once toured a prison to go talk about prison conditions? You think he ever did that? Of course not. That will require Uncle Dave and Chucky, to wait for it, to have integrity. We know they don't have any. So it's not about apples to oranges, Chucky. It's not a whataboutism. It's a legitimate point, because if you're going to raise, legitimate concerns about prisons, then do it for everybody. So again, shout out to Paul Knitra, the assemblyman who was on the show, for taking the time to go visit a prison, which is more than I can say for fucking lazy bastards like Uncle Dave, David Cruz, or Charles Stein, who've been sitting on their ass, playing with their dicks if they can find them at their age. And instead of really researching this, we have assembly people in Trenton doing their jobs for you. So again, folks, it's interesting to me when I see people like Uncle Dave and Chucky virtue signal and somehow think they have some sort of moral high ground to talk about. No, they don't. What Charles Style and David Cruz reminds us of is very simply, they are part of the ever ongoing clown show in the establishment media.
No. You're still a loser. Clown show. You're a Mets fan. Say it with me, Michael. Clown show. Clown show. Clown show. Clown show. Clown show. It's a clown show.
Let's do it, folks. Let's make sure we remember again. When it comes to Charles Style and David Cruz, yep.
Clown no. You're still a loser. Clown show. You're a Mets fan. Say it with me, Michael. Clown show. Clown show. Clown show. Clown show. Clown show. It's a clown show.
Folks, I can't think of two bigger clowns in New Jersey media than David Cruz and Charles Style. And just when you think that their takes can't get any dumber, or that David Cruz or Charles Style cannot be a bigger couple of come mierdas in New Jersey media, trust me, folks, they'll never disappoint you. Because it reminds us that clowns are not just at the circus, but clowns are the ones doing journalism in New Jersey. It's not Fernando Uribe. It's clowns like David Cruz and Charles Style. And I wish I could say that that's the end of my final thoughts, but it's not. Speaking of clowns, and shout out to Hudson County Chronicle, the Chronicle in Chief, Bruce Austin, for a very interesting new perspective there, new column about the would-be political backrooms again and the puppet master, Katie Brennan and her puppets, that we're seeing on the city council in Jersey City. Two guys who've never had real jobs, two beta males, like Jake Defros and Joel Brooks, remind us that when you elect socialists to any form of government, they don't know what they're doing. And of course, Katie Brennan wants to sound all sanctimonious now about, Jersey City's in a fiscal rut. We need to find our way out of it. Katie, during the 12 years of Steve Fulp, which, by the way, you're friends, right? And you had no problem going to Steve Fulp events and drinking at the open bar, okay, and mingling and schmoozing with everybody, okay? You didn't have a problem with Stephen Fulop during his 12 years. Did you ever come out and denounce him or the budgets? No, of course not. Que otra come mierda. With her other group of come mierda, her fellow assembly mate in the 32nd Legislative District, Robbie Bala, and of course, again, Jake Epros and Joe Brook. I encourage you to read the Hudson County Chronicles again on Facebook. Shout out to Bruce Alston, the Chronicle in Chief. But it will remind you about just the blatant hypocrisy that exists with Katie Brennan. What else is there? It's all about performative outrage and manufactured hysteria because that's all she is. She's a drama queen that loves the camera, loves to cut bullshit promos. And instead of cutting promos on a weekend, Katie, shouldn't you and Robbie Bala be at your legislative office meeting with constituents? Because unlike other legislators, like, for example, Brian Stack, Jerry Walker, Larry Weinstein, right, in the nearby 31st and 33rd legislative districts, they're meeting with constituents on a regular basis. What are you doing? You're there buying a new pantsuit, okay, for every appearance you make, cutting bullshit promos, somehow throwing Mayor Solomon's predecessor on the bus, which you had no problem sticking up for during the 12 years, which you had no problem going to events for, and being all giddy for Steve Fulop, and now you're for James Solomon. Fine, and listen, full disclosure, I want James Solomon to succeed. I don't want to see Jersey City failing. Now, whether or not he'll get $107 million from Trenton when the budget is due to be signed next week, we'll find out. But don't get it twisted, folks. Someone like Katie Brennan, who I hope to God has a primary opponent next year in 2027. And I hope that these two come in here, that Jake Epros and Joe Brooks have some sort of competition in 2029. But as the city council is due to vote on the upcoming budget, and yes, Mayor Solomon has made it very clear that a 20% property tax increase is going to be necessary to help offset the fiscal rut that Jersey City is in. We'll find out. But don't get it twisted, folks. Katie Brennan isn't acting in good faith here. And she has her little puppets on the city council. Now, whether or not they listen and do her bidding, we'll find out. If you ever need a reason to dislike progressives and DSA members or other far-left radicals, look no further than these three behind you. Because while they think they're helping Jersey City, no, they're only looking to further damage Jersey City. And folks, that's not a prediction. That's a spoiler. And those are my folks, special comment time here on the program. I know we're going a little bit late here, but again, a lot to talk about. Folks, I cannot say it enough. June is National Men's Mental Health Awareness. Now, this is a theme for the month of June that I can get behind, not some woke bullshit. Okay? And now more than ever, we have to make sure that we are there for our fellow men. Just a couple of Sundays ago, my dear friend David Quisenbing would have turned 42 years of age. But after a long struggle with mental health and depression, sadly, David took his own life last week. And while thousands of people filed into Bar A and Belmar to honor his memory, what we're hoping we can do today and moving forward is if you or a loved one that you know is struggling with mental health or with depression, trust me, you're not alone. There are resources available. We want you here. Please stay here with us. Please get the help you need. Let's rededicate our efforts during the month of June, during National Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. And let's do this for David. Again, my heart and prayers go out to his family. I can't even imagine the pain they're going through because of the loss of such an incredible human being. Folks, David Quisenbing wasn't just a great bartender and a smart businessman. David Quisenbing was an exceptional human being who I had the privilege of knowing and interacting with for more than 10 years. And I love you, David, and I miss you. And for everyone struggling with mental health the way David was, again, there are plenty of resources online. So please seek the help you need. We want you here. We need you here. Let's empower our men. Instead of trying to feminize men, like all the woke bullshit and the woke culture is trying to do, let's help our men be men. Let's stop feminizing men. Let's stop the feminization of manhood. Okay? Let's help men be men and remain men. And let's do that in David's memory. Again, during the month of June, something I can actually get behind during the month of June is National Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. If you or someone you love is struggling, please help them. Let's keep them. Let's help them get healthy. Let's help them get happy and just loving life again. Also, folks, another special comment. Again, I can't say enough last Thursday, being in downtown Manhattan for a parade to honor the 2026 NBA World Champion, New York Knicks. Yeah, I had to get up at 5 in the morning. Oh, my goodness. And let me tell you something. I had to get up there at 5 in the morning at the Hudson Bergen light rail stop to get to Exchange Place in downtown Jersey City, down to World Trade. And my goodness, to again, there with my chief of staff, the strategist, fellow member of the Pinnacle, Danny Uribe, of course, and others, and millions of New Yorkers and New Jersey and Southern New York Staters, and everybody that loves the Knicks and what this championship means to them. Again, folks, what a privilege it was to be in downtown Manhattan last Thursday for a parade in the Canyon of Heroes to honor the New York. That's our show for this week. And once again, folks, this week's edition of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe is brought to you by Duran Entities. Please visit Son Cubano, McDonald's at the Modern, and Solas in Jersey City for great vibes, great food, and a great atmosphere. Again, this week's edition of Real Talk is brought to you by Duran Entities.
Duran Entities has now joined Real Talk with Fernando Uribe and Fernando Uribe Media. Enjoy delicious food, excellent watch parties, and a wonderful atmosphere at any of our 3 incredible restaurants. Son Cubano, located at 40-4 Riverwalk Place in West New York, New Jersey. Ventanas at the Modern, located at 200 Park Avenue in Fort Lee, New Jersey. And Solas, located at 25 River Drive South in downtown Jersey City. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you there.
Yes, folks, that's right. Duran Entities is a proud sponsor here of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via Jersey First TV. Again, please follow their pages on Facebook, Instagram, and of course, great dining, great atmospheres, a good-looking crowd all the time, and just a wonderful trio of local establishments. Once again, these with Son Cubano, McDonald's at the Modern, and Solas in downtown Jersey City. Folks, celebrate a birthday, a graduation, a quinceañera, whether you were out for Father's Day or coming up for any holiday or birthday or special occasion. Once again, please visit Son Cubano in West New York, McDonald's at the Modern in Fort Lee, and Solas in downtown Jersey City. Proud sponsors of Real Talk here on Jersey First. That's our show for this week, folks. Once again, I want to thank the director for the Rebovich Institute for New Jersey Politics, Micah Rasmussen, for his appearance this week on Real Talk. Great episode, great interview, great information highlighting today's political climate. Folks, again, make sure you like us on Facebook or follow us on Instagram and X. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. And, of course, we'll get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud. Download Jersey First with you anywhere. And, of course, I am proud to lead the way here on Jersey First TV. Once again, folks, educating and navigating for the residents here in the great state of New Jersey. We do it every week here. Check out postings for start time for Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Folks, I can't say it enough again as we celebrate 6 years on the air here. Folks, without all of you, this accomplishment would not be possible. Thank you all for making this a part of your Monday night viewing. Remember, it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid. It's Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via Jersey First TV. I am the generational talent in Garden State Media, and so you're leader, the trustworthy opinion journalist. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Have a great rest of your week. Please party responsibly, and we'll see you next week here, folks, as we will have an exclusive with State Senator and Union City Mayor Brian Stack as he joins us here on Real Talk. Enjoy the rest of your week, folks. Again, always remember, it's New York versus everybody. Let's go Knicks, the 2026 NBA World Champion. We'll see you next week here, folks. Thanks for stopping by. And always remember, stay classy, everyone.